Harmonizing guitar riffs is one of the best sounds. Distorted guitars always sound awesome harmonized, but it's not always easy to find that perfect harmony for your riff, so let's take a look at a couple of ways to do this. Before I get into this, hit the subscribe button and the bell notification so you don't miss any of my future lessons. Now let's harmonize some riffs. One of the easiest ways to harmonize a riff is in octaves. Now, this isn't technically a harmony as you're just playing the same notes either an octave lower or an octave higher, but it can lead to a much fuller sound overall. As far as the arrangement of harmonizing a riff, there are a few options. The most common is to have two hard pan rhythm guitars in harmony. The left guitar will usually play the main guitar riff, and the right rhythm guitar will play the harmony. Now, that can be reversed as well, though it's a little bit less common. You could also have the two rhythm guitars in unison and add a separate third guitar for a harmony. Usually that would be centered in the mix, or you could even add two hard pan rhythm guitars playing harmonies. For this lesson though, I'm going to stick with the classic two hard pan rhythm guitars, one playing the main riff and one in harmony. If you're using octave harmonization, there are a couple of options. The entire riff can be moved up or down an octave in one of the guitars, or just parts of the riff can be moved up or down an octave. In this riff for my tune Unbalanced Tranquility, the lower notes are in unison, and the higher notes are played up an octave in the right guitar. This idea of keeping the low notes in unison, especially if it's an open string, and moving the higher notes up an octave is really common. Here's another quick example of that from this bluesy riff in my song The Great Stereopticon. Now let's take a look at some actual harmonies. If you're looking for the most common harmony that almost always works, you want to use either thirds or sixths from within the key of the riff, thirds being the most common. So what are thirds? A third is an interval encompassing three staff positions or three letter names. For example, A, B, C. So A to C is a minor third or 3 half steps, and A to C sharp is a major third or 4 half steps. Here's an A natural minor scale, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Let's harmonize this scale in thirds. So you have that A to C, which is a minor third, then B to D, which is a minor third, C to E, it's a major third, minor, minor, major, major. This is probably the most common way to harmonize almost anything, vocals, leads, but especially guitar riffs. This is going to give you that instant metalcore sound. And that would be the most common way to use thirds. Have one guitar play the main riff, and have the second guitar play it up a third within the scale. So together, here's a riff from my song Solar Storm. On the repeat of this riff, the right guitar moves up a third within the sixth mode of melodic minor, which is the scale that I'm using in this particular riff. The second most commonly used interval for harmonizing are sixths. For example, A to F, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And sixths are the reverse of thirds. So if I go up a sixth, it's the same as going down a third, 1, 2, 3, just in a different octave. And then vice versa as well. I could go up a third, same as going down a sixth, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Just in different octaves. Thirds and sixths are really harmonious sounding intervals, even with distortion. And they very rarely don't work for harmonizing riffs. Here are a few more examples of specifically thirds in a few of my own riffs. There are some times, though, when a straight third or sixth interval harmonization won't work. Here's a simple melodic line over an E minor chord. E, F sharp, G, B. If I harmonize this in third, you get E and G, F sharp and A, G and B and D. The notes of an E minor chord are E, G, and B, so the harmony here is not ending on a chord tone. If you have a chord or a chord progression underlying a riff, it's a good idea to follow that. Let's change this last harmony note to an E. So now we'll have a fourth between B and E. And now this harmony is going to help to outline this E minor chord more effectively. This is what I would call arpeggio harmonization, or following the chord tones with the harmony. Let's take a really cliche example of this. Say I had a riff with a larger arpeggio, some sort of techie thing. If I wanted to harmonize that, I would use the next shape of that arpeggio for the harmony. So sometimes you get fourths, and sometimes you get thirds. You could also harmonize with the next inversion of the arpeggio as well, so... and... in this case, you'd either have a sixth or a fifth. Here's a crazy riff of mine that uses some of these larger sweep arpeggios. When I harmonize this, I'm using the next inversion of these arpeggios. Here's a riff that uses both the interval approach and the arpeggio approach, using thirds for the scale runs and arpeggio inversions for the arpeggio runs. You can use other intervals in the key as well, seconds, fourths, fifths, sevenths. Some of these are obviously more dissonant, like the seconds or sevenths, but they can work well in the right situations. It wouldn't be terribly uncommon to use fourths or fifths. If you use fifths, for example, it's just a power chord harmony, and fourths would be the inversion of that. It has more of an open sound that's less harmonious, but it's still effective. Sometimes these other more dissonant intervals will happen in harmonies if there's more than one harmony going on. So you might have a melody note harmonized with a third and a seventh, or with a second and a fifth. So these more dissonant intervals are going to sound less dissonant if they're played alongside other intervals. One last harmonizing technique I want to look at in this lesson is to use a specific interval the entire time, or symmetrical harmonizing. When I talked about thirds earlier, that was all staying in one key. So sometimes it was a minor third and sometimes it was a major third. But what if I only used minor thirds? You might get something like this. This is one way you can get really dissonant harmonies. You can use minor seconds or half steps, for example. There are symmetrical scales as well. A whole tone, for example, is just continuous whole steps. So you can use a scale like that to make some of these symmetrical harmonies. This riff in my song The Ascent harmonizes this whole tone scale run up a tritone or 3 whole steps, and this is all coming from that whole tone scale. A diminished scale also works well for this. Diminished scales alternate between whole steps and half steps. That riff that played just a little bit earlier uses this sound. This symmetrical approach is a really easy way to get that super dissonant sound. Just play the same riff up in a different spot with the same fingering, and you'll get that dissonant harmony. So there are a few ideas for harmonizing riffs. There's a lot of other ways you can do this, but this should get you started. This is a really cool sound. It's definitely worth putting harmonies into your riffs. And if you enjoyed this lesson, subscribe, hit the bell notification, like, comment, share, and I'll see you all in the next video. Till then, stay proggy.